Hello and welcome back to another episode. Now, this isn't just another episode, unfortunately. I had planned on this being a fairly mundane video where I just shared what was occurring, some of my most recent DVD pickups, for example, and a gripe that I had with a local computer game store over the past week or so, well, past couple of weeks. But unfortunately, other things have occurred, and one big thing in particular that's really taken over my headspace. And if there's one thing that I really treasure about this YouTube channel, it is that this is the space where I can come and share whatever is on my mind. I don't feel as though I have to talk about, for example, the most recent Star Wars trailer, although sometimes I want to, and so I do. I also don't feel that that I'm simply here to entertain. It feels much more like the people who watch these videos and who comment on them and who share stories on these videos are a bit more collaborative in that sense. I do, I value this YouTube channel, and I value the people who watch it. And so it would have been odd to simply talk about a DVD collection following events in the past few days. Unfortunately, on the 30th of January, my brother and I heard that my mum had passed away. She was found in the house back in Wales, and sadly the police had to gain entry to the house because she passed away. Obviously she couldn't open the door. And ever since then, I suppose in February so far, I've just been on a bit of a roller coaster. Physically, we rushed straight down to Wales, and obviously to secure the house and make it safe, and also to start the various processes that have to happen when someone passes away. And the funny thing is, I always thought I was fairly familiar with death, as it were. My dad passed away when I was 4 or 5, and I'm an archaeologist. I deal every day with the dead, sometimes literally with human remains, but certainly in thinking about how people throughout time and across the world handle death. But the past few days have really shown me that you just can't be prepared for the death of someone so close to you, and so special in your life. Now, you may find it kind of amusing to know that there has been a part of my brain throughout the past few days that has been that kind of archaeologist or anthropologist who's been sort of fascinated by the fact that, for the most part, in our society, in Western culture, we're not very good at dealing with death these days, at least. You go to a graveyard, and any grave that's more than 60, 70, 100 years old tends to be not very well looked after. Some of the local graveyards in the northeast where I live, they have whole areas that are just overgrown because we tend to shun and shy away from the dead. This compared to, for example, some of the grave sites and tombs which we're familiar with in prehistory, for example, which are looked after and tended for hundreds of years. It's quite a stark contrast. So in modern life, we tend to not quite know what to do when it comes to someone dying, and I've been fascinated by the conversations that I've been having with people where they really don't know what to say or what to do. And I was saying to my brother, it's a little bit like being in high school again. You have a girlfriend or something, and you're like, no, you hang up first. You hang up first. Because you don't want to be the person who puts the phone down on someone who's recently bereaved, for example. So I've kind of, with a slightly wry smile, been fascinated by by a lot of this. But also, inevitably, I'm very sad, and I'm also a little bit conflicted. I mean, frankly, um, things had been strange with my mum. She'd been mentally unstable for quite a while. In fact, really all her life she'd struggled with depression and other mental health problems. But also in recent years we hadn't been getting on all that well, in so much as she never really tried to tackle these problems in herself. I've been trying to live a much more positive, forward-looking, all-embracing life in recent years, whereas she was unfortunately a little bit stuck, um, and a little bit harsh on herself. She wouldn't let herself, in some respects, be happy, to be honest. And that has been weighing on my mind these past few days, and it's a shame. It is a real shame that anyone, never mind your own mum, can live a life that has such deep depths of sorrow, if I'm honest, and self-doubt and crises, going on. But this is also a time to reflect on the good, and there was a heck of a lot of very very positive and good things that were in my mum's life, but also that she brought into my life. And I mean, one of the things which I've mentioned previously on this channel, for example, was how hard she would work at Christmas, trying to give us that Christmas experience, So I've talked about the morning we came downstairs to find the N64 set up, and even though she was never happy with the results, as it were, it was never quite Christmassy enough. She would always be trying to deliver, I suppose, a concept of Christmas. You see what I mean? And maybe that's kind of part of the problem, is that in some respects she was her own harshest critic, and so she could never quite be perfect. In fact, frankly, no one can ever be perfect. I think I have come to understand and accept that, and I tend to, when I'm looking at people, art, media, film, I try to look for what has been achieved, as opposed to what it has fallen short of. Even with Star Wars: The Last Jedi, I'm still looking at that as and for what it has tried to achieve. Whereas that wasn't really what my mum was able to do. She wasn't very good at doing that. If things didn't live up to the concept that she had in mind, then they were a failure. And all too often she held herself to very harsh standards. Now, something that inevitably comes to mind at a time like this is how, by definition, I wouldn't be here were it not for my mum. She brought me into the world, as they say, and no matter how complicated things became with her personally as an adult, she'll always be my mum. And I have always loved her and cared about her, no matter how strained things were with her at times. And something that reminds me of this is this little teddy here. This little fella is a koala, and he was given to me when I was a newborn. He was in the cot with me in intensive care, and around his waist is a little bracelet, and it says, "I belong to Mark Astles." So you might just about be able to see that on camera just there. And this little band is a bracelet. Actually, it's a medical bracelet that goes on the wrist of newborns. It's certainly the sort of thing that would go on the wrist of a newborn back in the 80s. Except this bracelet didn't go around my wrist. it went around my waist, just as it is on the teddy here. I was 13 weeks premature, and I was about the same size as this guy. And sometimes I reflect upon how fortunate I am to be here today, how much my parents would have just had the most terrible depths of worry and concern at that time. I've recently actually been, as it were, blessed with a niece. My brother and his wife had a very healthy baby, and they didn't have these issues. Goodness knows what it would have been like for them if Ruby, her name, if Ruby had been premature. So I was 13 weeks premature, and then I caught meningitis as well. I say I caught. Apparently, it was thrust upon me. Someone essentially infected me with meningitis. What an experience that they had to go through, and that Mum had to go through, knowing that this tiny little being, whose waist was the size of other babies' wrists, was fighting for his life, and had no certain future. In fact, they were convinced, because of the meningitis and because I was so premature, that I would grow up with horrible brain damage. Actually, I wouldn't be able to distinguish physical spaces, or, for example, talk in a way that was useful. At times like this, I do reflect upon how fortunate I have been, and on how, in that sense, successful Mum was as a mother. You know, I'm here today, and at the very least, that's a tick on her scorecard. So I'm not really sure where this video is going in that sense. All I know is that it would have felt disingenuous, out of keeping with the spirit of this YouTube channel, but also as well, it just would have felt weird, disappearing for a couple of weeks and then coming back and go, hey guys, DVDs, hey guys, computer games. I needed to say something, and just to log this, in the same way that in the past I've talked about how some of my videos on this channel are as much for me and my recollection as they are for an audience, or indeed as for some form of entertainment. In this case, for example, today, this is much more for my benefit, but also I do appreciate the fact that the people who watch these videos on this channel tend to be lovely, and I would appreciate lovely comments if you can. Support and patience and all that kind of thing is wonderful at a time like this, and I'm only halfway through the process of, for example, preparing for the funeral. That's going to be next Friday. Although next week I should be in a better headspace, and indeed next week I plan on talking about my DVD collection, the latest DVDs in the collection, and that other stuff. But today I simply had to talk honestly about what was on my mind, as I always try to do on this YouTube channel. So, as I say, this is not the easiest or most straightforward topic to talk about in our society. And at the very least, if you've made it to this point of the video, you're not feeling too awkward, hopefully. Indeed, hopefully, you appreciate my honesty. I didn't want to leave this unacknowledged, if you see what I mean. I didn't want to just come back in a couple of weeks' time and just say, oh, yeah, in passing, I've had some stuff to deal with. That's not what this YouTube channel is about for me. And certainly I didn't want this period to be a blank space when I look back upon it. So hopefully you appreciate that. But I think one final thing that I find myself reflecting upon is the fact that no one's life is perfect. No one is coming out of life with 100% score, if you see what I mean. We all impact people in so many different ways, and and in ways that sometimes we can't control, ways that we don't intend, for better and for worse. It's like the Wonderful Life thing, in that movie where George Bailey discovers that in ways that he couldn't even comprehend, his life touched the lives of others. And it's times like this that I really find myself thinking about that, and about how, at the very, at the very least, I can only hope that people look as well upon me as I try to look upon my mum. She was far from perfect, and at times, frankly, she hurt me, if I'm honest. But I love her. And I think that's probably the best and most honest thing that any of us can hope for at the end. In the end, is that the people loved us. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching. Thank you for your any comments or support that you might put down below. And as ever, until next time, do take care. Bye bye.